Good afternoon. My name is Deeann D. Mathews, and I am the author of The Freedom Guide for Music Creators. And I want to welcome you to this presentation of Black People, Occupy Your Music! Dance music, well, the drum beats of Africa have come all the way from Africa down through dance music and trance music all over the world. When people dance, chances are from here to India and beyond, they are dancing to something that was an African beat. Some of these beats go back 27, 28, 29 generations, so thousands of years. Hip-hop is also all over the world. But before there was hip-hop, there was something called the Negro spiritual. In our church yesterday, there was a soloist, he's here today with us, who sang Go Down Moses a cappella with a senior choir. I'll give you a little piece of that so that you understand what I'm talking about. When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. When our ancestors came to this country, stolen from the shores of Africa, kidnapped and enslaved, they did not give up the creativity that God gave them to make music. And they created a body of music in their oppression known as the Negro spiritual. And if you were going to trace the history of music from that time until this one, from the Negro spiritual you get, and also the work songs of the slaves, you get jazz and blues. And from that music, pretty much everything that is making money for anyone anywhere today was derived from jazz and blues. When you talk about American popular music, if you listen to it carefully, you will hear the echoes from the spirituals, from early jazz and blues coming down into this music. Even rock and roll was a black invention, even though you don't always see that today. But if you track, Elvis Presley learned everything he knew from someone who looked very much like all of you. Now, have you noticed, okay, can I have a volunteer who's a musician? Mr. Jefferson. There was $13 trillion made in the music industry last year. How much did you get?
None.
None, right. Okay, anybody else? $13 billion. Still a large number. Made in the music industry recently. Stephanie, how much did you get?
None.
Uh-huh. And the music that our community created continues to make money for lots and lots and lots of people. How much did you get?
None.
Very little. We still create the music that generates most of the money going on in the entire world in terms of music sales. Hip-hop is off the chart. Rap has been off the chart for a long time. Before that, you had people like Whitney Houston, who made billions and billions and billions of dollars for people. Now we got back to the 1980s and 1970s. We had Motown. And before that, you keep going back, and Duke Ellington is still around, and Louis Armstrong is still around, and all this money is being generated. Our community somehow missed capitalizing on a lot of this. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we did not understand our music business. And so the spiritual descendants, if you will, of the people that snatched our ancestors off the coast of Africa, snatched our wealth from us in terms of our music. I'm glad that all of you came today, because it's time for that to stop. And I'm going to present to you two small things that you can do or tell the musicians that you love to keep this money in our community instead of letting it continue to go out the doors to other people. The question that I often ask is, just take a moment and think about it. Do you want what you do in your music to benefit your community or everybody else's community? Think about it. Every one of us in here has people who are young people who are struggling to have enough money to pay for school and pay for tutoring. Every one of us in here has senior citizens who are struggling for the right to good health care. The money that African Americans have created from their music could solve all these problems if only we stopped letting it get taken away. I'm going to grab this from two issues. First as the music creator, and then as the performing artist. If you are a music creator, if you arrange, if you compose, the first thing you need to understand is how intellectual property works. If I take one of these books, this is a physical property. This is Rock the Might Right, The Language of Hip-Hop Culture by H. Sammy Alim. This is a physical property. You buy this, you take it home. But this physical property has something called a copyright, and that's an intellectual property. You can buy the book, you cannot buy the copyright. That belongs to whoever registered it. You can buy one of these, but that single copyright could generate millions of books. So again, you own the book, but you paid, well, how much does it cost? You paid, it's not coming to mind quickly, but you paid at least $20 for this book. You have the book. Whoever owns the copyright gets 20 here, and 20 there, and 20 here, and 20 there, and 20 here. As a musician, when you create a song, you have created a copyright. Now, how long does that last? A very long time. Your copyright lasts for your lifetime plus 70 years. So that if you write a hit song, you can feed your family to the third generation. Your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids. So that's 3 generations. It gets better. All you have to do to get a new copyright on something is change it 20%, which is basically add another verse. So if you train your grandchild how to do this, then you get that new copyright, and he can feed his kids, his grandkids, and his great-grandkids. One copyright can feed your family to the 10th generation. One. Of course, now it has to be good, and you have to get it produced, and you have to make sure it gets out there. But the potential is there. You can be limited by whoever chooses or chooses not to give you a job. How many books you can come in here and buy. No one can limit you in your intellectual property. You can create as many intellectual properties, as many copyrights, as many songs as God has given you the ability to create. No one can limit you in that area, but you do need to know how to protect it. And again, you're protecting it not just for yourself, but so that you can feed your family to the 10th generation on your music. That is the power that is available. And again, I ask the question, who do you want to feed? If you or your musician friends walk out there and they don't know how to handle their business and register their copyrights, congratulations, you'll feed someone else's family to the 10th generation. If you learn how to handle your music business, you have the power to feed your own family and your relatives and others whom you desire. Your decision to make. If you're not a composer, don't tune out here. Please don't, because there's something called public domain music. Go Down Moses, which I mentioned, was composed before 1923. And in the United States, anything composed or written before 1923 is in the public domain, which means that anybody can use it, and they can change it, and they can make it their own copyright for no charge. We've talked about the side of the composer or the arranger. Now let me move over to the side of the recording artist. When you go sign up for a standard record contract, there's something missing in there that if you don't raise a huge stink, it will not go in, and it will make you broke. So take good mental notes. It's called an audit clause. Audit clause. This gives you the rights to go into the company books and see when you should be paid. Now, there's a whole lot of things that go back into this, but that's the part you need to understand. If you do not have an audit clause in your record contracts, there is no possibility topside of this earth or in the next life either that you are going to get paid anything for your work. Because if you don't have the right to examine the company books, they simply are going to say that you still owe them. The company charges back against you everything you make in terms of tour support, every CD that's ever made, every bit of promotional time that they give you, all the posters, all that's charged back against your royalties. And only when your album has paid them for the expense that they've had, only then do they pay you. And if you don't have the right to go in and see when this has been done, you will never see a dime. In history, in African American history, there is something very similar to this. There was something called sharecropping that took place right after the end of the Civil War. And this is when I'm going to say African Americans denied the opportunity to get jobs in many other fields, often had to go back to their old masters and work for them. And so the master would say, okay, it's good. We'll do a contract. You're free now. We'll do this fair and square. You'll sign a contract whereby I will loan you your seed, I will loan you your equipment, I will loan you everything you need, and you will just pay me back out of your crops. Just sign here. The problem is most of these people could not read because they had been denied the right to read. So they just signed on the X and went from there. The problem is they couldn't read, and they didn't have, even if they could, they never had the right to go into their farmer master's books. So at the end of the year, they would come up hoping to receive some pay for their work once they paid back out of their crops. And then master would say, gosh darn it, you almost made it, but not quite. But don't worry, I'll take care of you. I'll just loan you more seed and more equipment and more rent on my land, and you can pay me next year and the next year and the next year. And it went on for another 100 years. We have in this audience at least 2 people that lived under the sharecropping system, and they can tell you slavery by another name did not end in 1867. Because of the way these people were forced into debt, it went on up to the signing of the Civil Rights Bill in 1964. Another 100 years. If you go sign up for a record contract and you don't get this audit clause in your contract, here's what happens to you at the end of the year. When they are finished charging back the cost of everything, you're going to walk right into that office and they're going to say to you, ah, you almost made it. Don't worry. Do another album. We'll just roll the cost of this album into the next one. And the next one. And the next one. Until you are drugged out, broke, disgusted, and sharecropped, and you die broke. Even though you have created millions and millions of dollars. Ow. There was a terrible segment on 60 Minutes that talked about how much dead artists make. They make more sometimes than living singers do, because now there's no one to hold these companies to account. But if you don't have an audit clause, you could be dead or alive. You're still going to be broke. Let me say it again. If you're going to do a standard record contract, you make sure you get that audit clause in there. This is the way that money is vacuumed out of the community at a very high rate of speed. We keep sending our best and our brightest young musicians, and we keep not warning them, and they keep getting taken for a ride. And they keep having all this wealth they're generated taken away from them. So, again, if you have a recording contract, if you know a recording artist, if you are thinking of being a recording artist, make sure you get the audit clause in your contract. For starters, that's all we have time for today. So let me just recoup just a couple things. Again, be not deceived. African American music has created most of the money that has been generated through music in the past since there was a record industry. So we do have tremendous wealth in our music. If you're a composer, make sure you get your copyrights registered and protected, because you can feed your family to the 10th generation. If you're not a composer, don't panic. Go find someone else's good tune, slap some new words on it. Or find some words that you like and slap a tune on it. This will do the same thing so long as the material you use came from before 1923. And if you are a recording artist, please, I'm begging you, I'm not too proud to beg like the Motown song says, get an audit clause in your contracts. This is the way that all of us as musicians make sure that the money that our music creates come back into our community so we can begin to lift ourselves up from the situation we find ourselves in. Thank you for your time.